morning so that we can walk through some statistics and hear some information. I welcome questions at the end so that we can get through this, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to manage everything within the hour. I ask for your patience because PAG is using Zoom now, and we are learning in the moment in terms of some of the logistics around sharing screens and muting and unmuting. So we're gonna, we did a little bit of a practice, and we're going to be trading over control. So bear with us. Crystal Spires is our driver along with Zonia, and we appreciate their assistance in this. So many of you have probably been on virtual meetings, I would imagine. And so as we go through this, if you want to, you should be able to share your video if you like. And then Crystal can also unmute as well as Zonia. So we'll get started. On the screen, we have the moderated meeting instructions if you have the opportunity to read through those. And then next, there we go. Then we'll call our meeting to order. It's 10:05 on the 16th of November. Who could have predicted this, right? So as was mentioned earlier, the COVID pandemic has certainly helped with people being able to stack up miles and saving how many miles they're driving to work. We heard from a couple of the jurisdictions that there's hybrid models and different plans that are out there. Next screen. We will capture those that are here today through in-kind. As you know that we use our in-kind match against our federal dollars. Part of our survey, when we have our online survey, we use the in-kind that is from our survey efforts. We are generating on about 250,000 a year based on the survey efforts. So that's a big plus, especially when we have so many meetings that have been eliminated. It's really helping PAG. So then next screen. All right, TRP program updates. Most of you would have gotten the agenda. So we're going to start with our air survey results. The air survey is normally something that is administered in May, and with the pandemic, we did push the activity inventory report effort to August. As part of the accommodation and leniency that we've been exercising, we allowed for more than 30 days to try and capture responses from everyone. The air survey is the method of which the updates happen in the database, and it also serves as the annual plans from our employers. And I will tell you, it was like pulling teeth to try and get the last 25 turned in. In doing so, we had some discoveries along the way. Even in the instance where an individual or a TC that was responding had HR in their title, the term FTE is quite confusing. So we had to go back and update many of our numbers because I was getting answers for employers that had 300 people that they only had 2 FTEs. So we're going to add some enhancements in December and hardwire a few things so that people can only provide data that is logically within range. So if we go through the results, you see on the screen, Crystal has pulled that up for us. Some of the significant shifts from the 203 employers that we were able to finally capture by the middle of October. The adjusted work schedule has dropped significantly. Also, when we look at some of the subsidies that employers were providing, and then with obvious, we knew that the pandemic was going to shift, but when we look at telework, which is kind of in the middle of your screen, I probably should have highlighted that one. It's at 47.8 from 30 in 2019. So that's a huge shift, but we know what's driving that. I would hope that in the long term, we're going to see that the telework options people are going to adopt. So it'll be interesting next year when we do the same effort in May to be able to see if that is a big swing. I'm imagining that many employers will have a hybrid option, depending. When we see a lot of these call centers that we're able to send their employees home with equipment and what their footprint will look like in terms of an office, we can't predict, but it's yet to be seen. Let's see. And other things that we looked at, I was really impressed with the promote events, that had gone up almost to the point where I'm wondering if there was a calculation error, but I went back. And so maybe they've all learned that that's part of the requirement based on the ordinance, that they have to be able to share information. And then with the one being the streetcar, I think was a real boost when the free days for the streetcar were happening as well. So any questions? If you know how to raise your hand if you see the participant list on the bottom, there's a way to raise your hand if you, we got one.
Hey, Mary, yeah, hi. So why do you have not applicable for Guarantee Ride Home? We still offered the program with Pima County.
Oh, do you?
Yes, and a couple of people have used it in the this year so far.
I will go back and look at the responses and see what we got. I can update that, but I mean, currently we are not subsidize it, but yeah, let me go back and look at that. Thanks for pointing that out.
And just to clarify, it's for Pima County employees.
Certainly. Yeah, but it would be within the air survey that you submitted. So let me go back and look. Okay, anybody else?
I have a question, but I don't know where do I raise my hand?
Well, I can hear you, so that's okay.
The rate of return, survey rate of return, do you have any numbers on that? Because I know ours was really low, and Karen tried her best to get county employees to fill out that survey, but I think it was I think maybe lower, you can correct me, Karen, but lower than it's ever been. I just wondered if that was pervasive or was it just us?
Well, this is the activity inventory report. So what you're talking about is the annual TRP survey. I'm gonna show you some numbers on that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Coming up soon.
Okay, sorry.
So yeah, the activity inventory report is something that is completed by the TC.
Right.
Yeah, that's not circulated to the employees.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, if we don't see any other hands, I'm going to proceed. Next slide. Okay, survey results. So in the agenda, it was noted as 2 and 3, but I did all of them. Okay, so there we go. So when we look at over the quarters, I pulled up what we have in terms of how many employers were serving during that period, and then how many employees total. You see all those numbers there. So when we look at the response rates, it actually went up. Now, mind you, for the county, you have an enormous number of employees, 7,000 something. So yeah, your total percentage rate was quite low. And the other point about a lot of these numbers is that without a doubt, we allowed for more than 30 days. We were chasing employers, especially those from Q2. Some of them, in fact, I've got one right now, UPS is still not completed it, but we have identified a TC, a person on the inside that we can work with, because we've been trying to be very flexible, because the capturing of the data is the most important. Whether they can get it done in 30 days is not, especially right now, not that big of a deal. So I will say that by October, so when we look at Q3, we have actually caught up, with the exception of maybe 3 employers, because we had huge lags over the summer. So I had some employers that were going from April that didn't finish until September. So we have 11 Walmarts. They took forever. And they had a lot of what we were identifying as employee churn, both from leadership and from TCs that trying to figure out who was going to be the one to complete the survey and circulate it was quite a chore. Between myself and Melissa, who works with our communications department, Melissa Meinrich, I mean, we were making phone calls and sending emails and trying to track down people. With Target Greatland as an example, Melissa actually went into the store to pick up their surveys so that we could enter them for them, because the idea of having the laptops in their lunchroom and all of that was completely shut down. When you have some of the locations like that, they do not allow their associates or their employees to have any type of internet access, probably because they'd be standing in an aisle somewhere on their phone. So the electronic devices that they do have don't have internet access. So along the way, though, I would say that we've had some real success stories. For example, the pecan company down in Sahuarita, they had some serious logistics to overcome, plus language barriers, and they were able to have an amazing response of like 86%. They had a new HR manager that got creative and was able to administer the survey. So I would stand by the statement that when people really want to, they make it happen. When you have larger employers like the county, you guys are fragmented and spread clear across the entire region. It makes it a little more difficult. But I would say that having the extensions really, really helped. So Q4 numbers that you see in red, certainly that is only October is turned in. But we're seeing that with people working at home, the response rates are quite high. On average, we certainly have about half of any group. The other note that I would put on this, and I have not actually put it on paper yet, but we looked at the employment viewer that is posted online to evaluate how many employers exist versus who is in our database. And there's some market share to be captured. So in the new year, we will try and look at how to do that in a strategic way where we can add additional employers. Happy to report that I had a conference call with Amazon. So Amazon told me that they will turn in their materials and be a TRP employer. The paperwork is going to be my Christmas gift. They said I would have it by then. They actually administer all of their TRP efforts out of Southern California. So they will be surveying in March of 2021. And they have approximately 3,000 employees between, I believe they said they have 3 actual buildings. So, all right. Any questions? If you want to raise your hand, you look at participants, and then there's a little box that you can raise your hand. No. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions. No blue hands. All right. So now I am going to share my screen. But you got to unshare yours, apparently. There we go. So I'm going to turn it over, because we have a new website. I am going to turn it over to Brad Ellis. Share. And he'll talk about our new website that has been launched as of the 14th of September. Okay,
yeah, good morning. So for those of you who don't know, we had a problem with our website over the summer and had to rebuild it on the fly. That provided some challenges, however, gave us an opportunity to really get a jump start on a project that was long-term, something we wanted to do. We really wanted to clean up the site, make it a lot more user-friendly, a lot less dense. So when we first launched in September, we had some of the bare bones on there for travel reduction, for Sun Rideshare. Subsequently, last week, we were able to add a lot more, a lot of the alternate modes of transportation, a lot of additional resources. As you can see here, there's the employer resources. So we took what we thought was the best of the old site, mixed it with what we thought was missing. And I think I would guess we're about 75% of the way there from getting everything we want in terms of sun rideshare, travel reduction, and things of that nature. We went into a lot of detail about the alternate modes of travel, the advantages, the disadvantages, or excuse me, the advantages to each one, what the benefits are. So if you're talking, telework, we talk about the flexibility of schedules. If you're talking riding and biking, we talk about the health benefits. Obviously, there's always the environmental benefits, but some of the same things you found on the old site, there are some of the documents and some of the materials for you to use. As Mary's showing here are the award winners. That is kind of cleaned up a little bit. We're still looking at maybe the presentation of this page, trying to make it a little more user friendly, especially on mobile, but there's some challenges there. But I think we've got, for the most part, most of the things you will need, whether it's something you need as a TC or something that you can then point employees to see, hey, I'm thinking about using transit, but I'm wondering, how do I get to a bus stop? We talk about, links to whether it's the park and rides, whether it's, hey, did you realize you can just ride your bike and park your bike there? So we think we've again cleaned it up, made it look nice, put most of the tools there. We're always looking for feedback. So if you see something we're missing or see something we can do better, let Mary know. We also have a forum here that'll get back to the communication department. But again, I think we got it cleaned up, so it looks a lot nicer, a little bit easier to find. Some things were scattered on the old site. So yeah, we're happy with where we're at there, and now we're turning our attention actually to some air quality stuff this week. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the TRP.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Let's see. I've got to figure out how to view if anybody has any questions.
I don't see any questions.
Oh, you don't see any? Thank you, Crystal. I got to stop my screen share. And I know Rick is on the call, so I wanted him to be able to see that we got Vanpool up and with the current rates and such. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And now we have Dustin is going to give us an air quality update. Thank you, Brad. Off to Dustin.
Hey, Mary, thanks. Yeah, so as far as air quality and TRP, I think I mentioned last meeting that we successfully concluded the 20-year carbon monoxide limited maintenance plan ended July 10th. Of course, programs such as the state vehicle emission inspection program and travel reduction program are transportation control measures that are part of our state implementation plan and will continue. And we'll see benefits from those. One of the pollutants affected by transportation, of course, is ozone. It's been a concern in our region as we've been close to the margin for that standard for years. EPA did decide to retain the current standard, the 2015 standard of 0.070 parts per million that had been lowered in 2015 from the 2008 standard of 0.075. So in maintaining that standard, it's less likely that they'll go through the designation process as they did in 2015 when the standard was revised down. So just in case they do, we had the violation in 2018 that ADQ did submit an initial exceptional events notification to EPA. So if that comes up, we'll use that to our benefit. However, this year, as far as transportation, in the beginning of the pandemic, I think March through about May, we did see some drops in nitrogen dioxide. Of course, that's one of the main contributors to ozone along with VOCs, and half of our regional NOx is transportation related. So PDQ did record 8 days, it looks like this year, of exceedances of that ozone standard. However, looks like 7 of 8 of those were due to the influence of wildfire smoke into our region. And so PDQ has flagged that data, and we could request an exceptional event demonstration on that data if need be in the future. However, for 2020's design value, it did remain 0.069. So we limboed under the bar again. If it does come up in 2021, 2022's average going over the margin, then that wildfire intrusion smoke will come into play. Last week, EPA held a multi-agency air quality meeting, and Maricopa Associated Governments also did emphasize the benefits of reduced VMT and travel. And some of their pollutant amounts, of course, with the wildfires, they had many exceedances as well. But Lindy Bauer, their environmental director, emphasized the importance of the telework continuing. Regionally, we're seeing our vehicle miles traveled creep back up to where they were, just due to a shift in travel patterns. So I think the prolonged use of telework will play an important role, perhaps in next ozone season as well. So of course, the other pollutant that these play into are the carbon dioxide emissions, and we'll be doing the regional greenhouse gas emission inventory coming up due out next summer, and they'll show the transportation related emissions. We're just completing a project that we received a grant from FHWA to come up with an alternative fuels corridor deployment plan to deploy electric vehicle charging and CNG fueling along I-10 through Arizona. So that'll be ready on our website at the end of the month, beginning of next month, and I'll share that out. So that's it for the air quality updates, Mary.
Thank you, Dustin. One thing I'd like to mention is when we finalized our annual report for ADAQ, Dustin updated the number that we use based on the MOVES model. So when we're looking at miles saved and we do the math of pounds of pollution avoided, it went from 76.2 to 78.2. Am I quoting that right, Dustin?
Sounds right. Yeah. Each year as the fleet vehicles becomes newer and cleaner, you'll see that it takes more miles reduced to save a pound of pollution.
And as part of that process, what we did learn is that magic formula is different here in Pima County as it is in Maricopa. I know Amanda's on the call, and we were looking at how the calculations happen, and it's more complex. It's not A plus B equals C for sure. But we looked at the numbers and how it's a little bit different. But I mean, that's positive that as vehicles are newer and don't emit as much, so that's a plus. But yeah, I wanted to mention that did change. So when we do our calculations, it's a little different.
Yeah, and what we've seen year over year is that that difference becomes smaller and smaller. The new cars are only so much cleaner, and as more of the old cars are off the road, there's less the next year to see the benefits. So, whereas in the past it would go from the 50s to 60s miles to save a pound, now we're looking at that margin shortening. So the fleet is overall getting cleaner, but the emission controls are getting pretty clean, and it's hard to improve much more upon them.
Small advances. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions for Dustin, so we will move on. Okay, thank you. And next up is Paul. He normally has earphones, and I call it the radio show, but he's not doing that today.
They get kind of hot, Mary, so I gotta go without if I can.
Okay. All right. He's going to review some information about the analysis that the technical services team at PAG completed. This was presented to regional council in September. Is that right, Paul?
So I believe the information was shared, but there was not a presentation per se.
Okay.
So, and on our website, you'll find an article that's a little bit briefer than what I'll share today. Bear in mind that I'll be talking about analysis that has kind of looked through the June time period of 2020. Our folks are continuing to utilize a lot of these data sources, but that's kind of the August timeframe was when it was pulled together into a kind of a report package. So they're seeing quite a bit out there. So we, just to kind of give you a sense of what we do, we regularly monitor traffic patterns throughout the region. And traditionally we do that through mostly our sources of data where we can utilize those traffic counters. We utilize the TRP survey data quite extensively. In recent years, our folks have gotten much more akin to utilizing a variety of different data sources. And so some of those data sources you'll see are being put to use in this analysis here. All right. So generally speaking, we're looking at a timeline. We're looking at some pre-COVID impacts to try to establish a baseline of understanding what traffic patterns look like before a good portion of stay-at-home orders and things were put in place, and then get some understanding of what the impacts have been since that time. And again, we're looking through about June, July time period for what I'm covering today. All right. So one of the data sources that our folks are using is the Google mobility data. And so it doesn't give you exact origin destination information, but it gives you some information about what types of travel activities are taking place. And largely the big takeaway here is that we saw a significant shift from the traditional home to work commute, where we saw the travel activities around employment centers decreased around 36% during the time period. And the residential to residential trips increased just over 12%. So we're seeing different types of travel activities take place throughout the region. And this is kind of playing out globally as well, depending on what market you're looking at. So we want to get a fairly clear understanding of what's happening with all the vehicle miles traveled. And so on the left side of the screen, we have kind of the pre-COVID baseline that you see in the January timeframe. Then we see that significant drop after school closures take place, and then the stay-at-home order keeps those numbers down. So we're seeing fairly low vehicle miles traveled all the way through the time period of June. And then we start to see the VMT, the total trips, the total miles traveled rising back up. And we've seen that continue to closer to those pre-pandemic levels. So we're seeing, good amount of travel again, but what we're observing is that there's different patterns that are taking place out there. So we're trying to get a clear understanding of what that means. Generally speaking, we're assuming that it's going to be somewhat temporary and that there's going to be a return to some version of normal. We're just not exactly sure what that version of normal might look like. So we also want to take a close look at some of the impacts to transit ridership. And I believe this looks at March to June 2019 compared to March through June 2020. So we see some significant decreases in transit ridership across the entire board. So we're looking at overall ridership for all transit services roughly 33% below the January to February 2020 levels. And then we see a variety of different differences throughout the services there. So using the PAG employment database and the TRP employer data and some other travel pattern data sources that we have, we have some takeaways for daily trip observations when we look at major employers. So one of those is the vast majority of the daily in and out trips for major TRP employer sectors. They're associated with the retail sector. What we see in that retail sector is a decrease of 8% in worker trips, while the average of all employer sectors shows a 23% reduction in comparison when you look at March through June of 2019 and compare that to March through June of 2020. Sorry about that. All right. We see that all sectors of TRP employers have begun to show improvement as of June. I believe that's continued. We haven't really looked at the latest numbers with cases going back up and things of that nature. So there's probably some fluctuation that's taking place there. The retail sector has shown a 16% increase from the January to February 2020 baseline, while other sectors remain closer to the low point that was observed in April 2020. So some recovery is taking place, fairly slow, but we're hoping that will continue. And then we see different economic generator areas are recovering in different ways. And so we look at the bridges and Tucson Premium Outlet showing a recovering of average number of trips pretty substantial, while other locations are still showing significant reductions from the 2019 March to June average. In addition to that, we all know that the Tucson International Airport is seeing quite a drop in service. That's showing up in the access of vehicles to that facility as well. So in conclusion, we are expecting this is going to be a somewhat temporary commute pattern reduction. We're already seeing the vehicle miles traveled come back up to the pre-pandemic levels. We're seeing different types of trips take place. We're just not quite sure what that new normal is going to be. We see that shift in mobility to no one's surprise. The different trips are more residential to residential. That could be a delivery of goods and services to the home and those types of things, as well as limitations to access to the workplace. We know that the impacts on the economic centers have varied, but generally speaking, most of those have seen drops in the average daily trips. Obviously, that's affecting their bottom line, sales tax collections and the like. So we're keeping a close eye on it. And if you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Our folks are working hard to understand what the impacts of this unique situation are going to be on our travel patterns regionally. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Mary.
With the understanding this analysis happened before the recent news that things are shifting again. We are going into flu season. I would imagine that we will probably be doing more analysis by the end of December, beginning of January.
I'm hopeful. I'm not sure that we'll pull together a report per se, but I certainly want to look at these numbers again around the turn of the year and then start to look at them in spring of next year as well. So we want to look at them every quarter, if not every 6 months while we're in these times.
Great. Okay. Any questions for Paul? People can chime in, or if we can unmute you if you have anything you would like to add. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is our TC training. Generally, we do 2 live trainings where we go remote and go off site and invite people, and it takes about a half a day to do. Given the current conditions, we're going to have virtual trainings, and it will be 1 hour. We are targeting mid-December and probably another one in January. Because the sessions were, multiple hours of training, what we will do is cut that down to 1 hour and then up the frequency to be able to include more opportunities for people to chime in. We've been keeping a list of the number of new TCs that have joined us. I'm thinking there's about 30 because there's been such that employee churn. So for those that are on this call or are wanting to, we'll be sending that out to everyone. And then, of course, we'll be emphasizing the value of telework and how people have different platforms that they can use. In the process of connecting with different groups, I will tell you that every organization is doing something different. So there's Microsoft Teams. Amazon uses something called Chime. Some people are using Zoom. Some people are using Google. So it's one of those deals where people can plug in a lot of different ways. So, okay, so now we get to hear from PDEQ, Beth Gorman. She is going to review the survey results that FMR, the consultants that they work with each year. So take it away, Beth.
Thanks, Mary. Good morning, everybody. Excuse me. And thank you, Crystal. Crystal's gonna help me with the slides. So as Mary mentioned, every year our department hires an outside consultant. And for many years it's been FMR Associates. And we have them evaluate how our program, the Clean Air program, has been able to reach the community. And then it's a tracking survey. So it stays pretty much the same over time. And we've been doing this for 29 years. But we do try to sneak in new questions here and there when we can. And this year we had to do it a little bit differently. And I'll talk about that in just a second. Next slide, please. Crystal, thank you. So the last 5 years, we've been, instead of being completely telephonic and people just responding to phone calls, we've opened it up so that it's half of the sample is on the telephone, but then the other half is online. And I wondered how people got into that online pool of human beings to survey. And I just got an email from where I bought my car a couple of years ago. And they were asking if I was interested in participating in this type of survey process. And so that's, I guess they somehow invite certain people to be in this big group, this big pool of interested individuals. They're interested in taking surveys, which I said no. But normally when somebody calls me on the phone, if I happen to be around and I pick up the phone, I'll answer a survey just because, we expect other people to do it. But yeah, I'm not interested in being a frequent participant. So, but anyway, half of the 500 people that we surveyed, the 500 households, were by phone and cell phone, and then the other half were online surveys. And we did it this year in May, and typically we do the survey in May so that every year it's a similar population base. And then they try to make it as reflective of the community as possible in lots of different ways, including ethnicity, gender, income. And they also split out the community in quadrants, and then they try to get equal number of participants from each area. geographic area of our community as well. So they do a really good job of trying to get something, answers that are reflective of the entire community. And then this year, because of COVID, we had to do things a little bit differently. And so some of the questions we asked people to remember what their behavior was like before COVID, so pre-COVID. And then since we did the survey in May, the other part of the question is, okay, now during COVID, what are you doing? What are your behaviors? And then the variation for this survey is plus or minus 4.5 statistical variation. So that's kind of complicated. It depends on how many people are responding to the different questions, but basically it means that there's a range of the percentage of the response that we get. So if it says like 70% of the people believe this one thing, then it could be anywhere between like 66 and 74. So there's a range of about 9 points in there, and that's typical for most surveys. Okay, thanks, Crystal. Next slide, please. So, and the other thing about this survey is there's lots and lots of questions, and it's a big, thick book that they give us in the end. So I just picked out a few because I can't go on and on. We're trying to keep this brief. So I picked the things that I thought were interesting, but the survey, the whole report is on our website, and you're welcome to look at the whole thing. And it is kind of interesting. But one of the things we ask, because this is a group of people that are our audience, basically. We ask people if there's anybody in their household who suffer from any respiratory or breathing related medical conditions, because obviously those are people that are most at risk. And because of that, the people in their household might be a little more sensitive and might be a little more aware of things that are going on in the community to help improve air quality. So they're a special group, and actually the researchers look at that group and they do analysis and see if the responses are a little more positive from people that answer positively to this particular question. So it's interesting. You can see that it goes up. Its highest it's been was 43%, but it's down a little bit, down to 36%. So I just thought that was interesting to see that it kind of stays within a certain range of the number of people that have folks in their household, but that's still a pretty significant number who are sensitive when air pollution levels are high. Next slide, please. And then another question that we asked is if they're aware of different activities that are going on in the community. And that's a really good number. 82% said they were. And then we asked them specifically if they're aware of some of these different events. And of course, again, the survey took place in May. Unfortunately, a lot of these events were canceled. Some of them were held in the fall, but a lot of the springtime events were canceled. So you can see that, there is roughly about 40 to 50% of the population are aware of most of these different events. And the one that I did want to pull out is the travel reduction program, because that was kind of a nice bump. The year before it was 21%. And this year it was 28% of people that were aware of the travel reduction program. And then what else? Just, the other ones are not all that significant as far as the change in the percentage, but there's a pretty good awareness generally in the community of these different events that we're involved with. Next slide, please. And then we dig a little bit deeper. So people who were aware of some of these events, we ask if anybody in the household participated in these events. And this year we got a 20%, which was up from the previous year, but it's around the similar range to the other years that we've asked the same question. But again, we're pretty good. We're pretty happy with that 20%. It'd be wonderful if it was more, but we'll work on that. Okay, next slide. So the ones that were aware of our events, we asked them if they thought there were favorable opinion of these events, or that were their opinion, was it very favorable or was it somewhat favorable? And if you combine those two categories together, we had 88% of the people that felt favorably about these types of events and activities that are going on in our community to highlight air quality and actions that people can take to improve air quality. Next slide. And then this one, I was scratching my head on this one, but basically we then asked, okay, so people that were aware of the program, people that participated in the events, did they change their behavior after participating in an event? And this was definitely a significant drop. I mean, the other ones are kind of up and down a little bit here and there, but going from 75% last year to 59% this year, that's a big jump. And it's not in the direction that we'd like. So I'm open for suggestions as to why that might be. Of course, we're right in the middle of COVID when we're asking this question. People are feeling maybe that they need to stay home and that they're not doing a lot of the things that we are asking them to do. I'm not sure why there was such a significant drop in this, but I'm going to blame it on COVID. We blame everything else on COVID right now, right? And hopefully again, next year, things will be better, a little bit more back to normal, and we'll see behavior changes based, or at least people talking about behavior changes that they've made as a result of the programs that we all are involved with. Next slide. And then this is a question that we ask, it's kind of interesting. The people that are on the phone, we don't give them the answers to this. This is just off the top of mind. And the folks that take the survey online, of course, there is a list that they have to work from. But what we were excited to see is that the top items that were mentioned are also items that are in the education that we do from the Clean Air Program on a regular basis, especially the ones that are highlighted in red. The drive less, that's up significantly this year from 35% up to 47%. So, and obviously part of that is COVID as well, but that's a good thing. And then we also, one of the messages is try to pick at least one day a week to leave your car at home and to, take an alternative mode of transportation. And that was up also this year. And then also the interesting thing down at the bottom is I can remember for years when we first started doing this survey, that number used to be huge. Doing nothing to reduce air pollution, it used to be like 30% of the people that we surveyed state, I'm not doing anything. And so the fact that it's down to 11% is really exciting to me, that by far the majority of our population is actively doing something to help improve the air that we're all breathing. So I thought that was a great result. I'm very happy to see that over time, how that's improved. Next slide, please. And then this is another, just an awareness. Were they aware of these programs? We asked a lot of different questions, but about awareness, but these are the two that I pulled out for today. Of our department, basically, that was down. The highest number that we ever had was in 2016. That was 68% of the people that were aware of our department. And then we also asked about Sun rideshare services, and they're down, it's down as well. But the significant thing is I looked back up our budget, and in 2016, with the highest readings that we had, the highest response rates of awareness, The next year, 2017, was when our budgets were cut. Our budget was cut. So I can blame that. So I thought, but anyway, we've got, there is awareness. There's always room for improvement with awareness of these programs. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the amount of advertising we can do, and, how we can get out to the community and get the community aware of the great things that we're all doing. Next slide. So these are the questions that when we asked about travel behavior, and then we compared before COVID and after COVID. And I thought it was pretty interesting that we did see a drop in drive-alones for shopping. And I thought that was a really good thing. And carpooling, we are seeing a bit of a jump there. Bus stayed the same, but biking was increased. And then I thought that was interesting, Mary. You might want to see, of course, we're talking about very small numbers, but we did see a little bit of a jump in van pooling there that I thought was interesting. So this is all prior to COVID. But next slide. Asked also about leisure, and drive alone, it bumped up a little bit, and carpooling dropped down a little bit. Not sure why. Again, this is prior to COVID, but bus remained the same. Biking went up, and that's nice to see. And then also van pooling again went up a little bit. So again, this was just for other trips outside the work commute that we're talking about. And then the next slide, please. So now focusing in on the work commute. And because people sometimes take different modes during the week, that they can make multiple mentions. So sometimes they might have to drive one day, and they might be doing something else, taking the bus or carpooling other days. But basically, so before COVID, we were really excited about how drive-alones had dropped. And I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And it dropped from 68% in 2019. SOV is, in case you don't know, is single occupant vehicle. We're not swearing at somebody when we call them that, really. But anyway, so the drive-alones were down from 68%, which was lovely to see. And then, obviously it's gone up. They've gone up a little bit since COVID, because maybe people aren't comfortable carpooling with anybody, or maybe they're not comfortable, taking the bus. But anyway, these were sort of interesting numbers to see. Teleworking, obviously that jumped up considerably compared to pre-COVID times, as we see, as Paul was reflecting as well. Carpooling, there was a little bit of a bump there. Biking, a bump also. Taking the bus a little bit too, but streetcar went down. And then walking, that's a significant jump from 5% to up to 19%. So, people are getting out there during COVID, they're being more active. So that's a good thing, hopefully for their health, for their bicycling more, and they're walking more, and they're staying at home and teleworking, which is good for air quality. Next slide, please. And then this is one of the last slides here. We asked, because we're trying to calculate emission savings, and we can do that by figuring out how many miles people are not driving, and it was very interesting for us to see this. So a significant number of people are reducing the miles that they're driving on a daily basis. 15 miles or more, that huge column on the right, that 46% of the people are reducing their miles driven by that much every day. So it's got to have a good impact on lots of different things, on congestion, on air quality, on resources, saving money on gasoline, wear and tear on your vehicle, lots of benefits to driving less. And that's, again, kind of a focus of our program is try to get people thinking about things that they can do besides jumping in that vehicle and driving by themselves. So I think we're getting close to the end. Crystal, is there anything else? Yes. So I don't think these links are live at this point, but let me know if you want a copy of the report. I can certainly show you where it is on our website. I can also send it to you. And if you didn't know, you can get real-time air quality information on our website as well. You can also sign up and get our advisories and news releases if you'd like. You can just contact me. And then ADEQ, they provide 5-day air quality forecasts, which that's a wonderful resource for people, especially if you are sensitive, or if for workplace planning, even if you know that there's some of your staff that have asthma, maybe if it's projected to be bad air day in a couple of days, you might want to change their schedule so they could stay inside that day or limit the amount of time they are outside. And then social media, you follow us, please. It would be really nice. And then also just get a hold of me if you have any questions. And in the meantime, if anybody has any questions now, they could let me know. But that's my email if you have any other questions, or you can call me too. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Well done. It was nice when we saw the survey and the survey results that the awareness of what we're doing is up. Credit to the social media that Brad Ellis is in charge of for PAG, putting out information about TRP and air quality and all those kinds of things. We are right at 11:01, so I'm going to thank all of our presenters today. So Paul and Dustin and Brad and Beth. Appreciate Zonia and Crystal for driving the bus today in terms of being able to flip slides and take care of us. And with that, I don't see any other questions from our participants. I appreciate the task force for chiming in and for Rick from Enterprise being with us. I have one person out there. I don't know who you are. I only have a partial phone number. It's 520-923. You're muted right now, but I don't know who you are. If you can send a chat box, that'd be good. Or if you're on the phone, can we unmute them, Crystal? 520-0923.
I cannot unmute them. They would have to unmute themselves.
Oh, okay. Well, we have a mystery caller. All right. With that, we'll call it a wrap. And I wish everybody a wonderful week. Stay safe. Watch the numbers. We'll see what's happening out there. And happy holidays. We kicked it off. It's 80 degrees, but it's holiday season. So the best to everybody. Take good care. Thanks very much.